my therapist kept making notes and saying, like, the thing that you keep saying a lot is something's not right, I'm broken. And the things that I'd always bring up, it wasn't like anything big. It was always just like little things that were just like in my brain. I was like, there's something wrong with me because other people don't think like this. Other people don't do this. So I just remember sitting at the top of the hill in my local area, sitting on a bench, and I was just crying. And I said to my husband, I think I need to quit my job. And I don't have another plan, but I just don't know. I don't want to do this. And I feel like I just need to just quit and figure it out. I think I grew up thinking I was going to be like Carrie Bradshaw. So I feel like I'm not too far off. I have written a couple of articles for magazines, so I'm basically Carrie.
Welcome to NEXUS Talks. We're really excited to have you on the podcast today, Charlotte. So for those that have not come across you before, can you tell us a bit more about you and what you do?
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to have a chat. So I'm Charlotte Stavrou. I'm the founder of SevenSix Agency, which is an influencer marketing agency based in London. And we work on campaigns that are truly representative. So your average influencer marketing campaign works with lots of different brands, from household names to startups and small businesses. But what we do differently is that we really factor in inclusivity. And that's always been what we're about. Me personally, outside of the business, I'm also a creator in my own right. So I started off in beauty and lifestyle and then a bit of fashion. And then now I do B2B creator work. So I work with people like Vodafone Business or BT or Samsung talking about business solutions specifically for small businesses.
I'm really going to dive and grill you into this whole idea of inclusivity and diversity because I hear these words all the time. Good. And I'm glad you're ready because I'm actually so interested by it. But before I do, can I ask how you got here? Like, was this something you grew up thinking, I definitely want to get into beauty and lifestyle? Or how did the transition go?
I grew up thinking I was going to be like Carrie Bradshaw. So I feel like I'm not too far off. I have written a couple of articles for magazines. So I'm basically Carrie. I've always loved social media, always. And to the point where it got like obsessive. My MySpace days, I was obsessed with MySpace. And then Facebook came and I had, 1,001 Facebook albums, even though I didn't really want to get onto Facebook because MySpace was my everything. So I was a bit of a late adopter. So I've always been that person that's just like really into social and also content in general. And I studied languages at university, did a lot of freelance social media work whilst I was at uni and then also after graduation. And then my first like proper job, quote unquote, was for a graphic design firm, and they hired me for social media for one of their clients. And that's where it all began. So I've always done pretty much since I left uni, social media, community management, and then influencer marketing as I got older and it became a thing. I worked in e-learning early on, and I worked with the influencers of the e-learning world, which sounds ridiculous, but actually e-learning is quite a specific industry, and there are like celebs in the e-learning world. This was like 2013, 2014. Twitter was huge then, X now, we did so much work on then. It was all about community engagement. And I'd bring over celebs, quote unquote, from the e-learning world from the States and then get them to do events, for us in the UK. And then I moved to Sanrio and I headed the Hello Kitty brand for the EMEA market. And that focus was around 18 to 35-year-old females. So now millennial women, but at the time they were the young women. The whole job was to make Hello Kitty cool again. So we worked heavily with influencers on content and just constantly gifting product and then doing collaborations with the likes of ASOS, H&M Bear, GCDS, OPI, Tangle Teezer, literally any brand you can think of. I probably sat in a room and created a deal for it in 2016 to 2018. And then I moved to Wild Nails, which was a cult nail salon in London that was created by, I was going to say beauty entrepreneur, but entrepreneur Charmaine Reed, and worked there for a little bit. And then off the back of that went freelance because I was so inspired. I was introduced to so many incredible female founders that just kept coming through the door. And I'd never been exposed to that before. My sister-in-law was an entrepreneur, and I kind of saw her as like the only person that I knew really that's just successfully ran a business that was a woman. And then I just started to meet all these incredible entrepreneurs, and I was like, yeah, I love this. So I went freelance, and then a year later I started SevenSix, which was about influence marketing.
I love that. Where is your Hello Kitty merch? I'm not seeing any.
Oh, it's everywhere. It's
okay, fine.
More of a red Hello Kitty. I share a house flat with my husband, so she's hidden away. But I'm more of a classic red Hello Kitty than like the more modern pink one.
In your face, everywhere.
Yeah, Hello Kitty is littered around this flat, and also my office. We've got stickers. Also, the back of my laptop is full of stickers of Hello Kitty on.
Now I believe you. See, before I was like, well, where's your Hello Kitty? And you said you took the plunge and went freelance. Were you scared?
Do you know what? I wasn't scared, but I was. So my husband has pretty much, since I've known him, we've been together for 10 years, and he's always been freelance. He's now founder of his own business as of 2 weeks ago. He's started a few businesses, but he's gotten a big one that he's launched recently, which is exciting. So he's made me see that, it was a possibility, because when we were, how old was I when I went freelance? 28. When we were 28, I was like, oh, this seems scary, but you do it, so it must be okay. But I think I felt a bit like I failed. So when I went freelance, it felt like I had to prove myself quite heavily to myself. So I took the job at WAR and then quickly realized that it actually wasn't the job that I wanted, just because the role wasn't quite it. So I left and took them on as a freelance client. And I just remember sitting at the top of the hill in my local area, sitting on a bench, and I was just crying. And I said to my husband, I think I need to quit my job, and I don't have another plan, but I just don't know. I don't want to do this, and I feel like I just need to just quit and figure it out. And he was like, do it. Thank God for him. Because I feel like if I asked anyone else, they'd be like, no, I think you should, stick it out, get a plan together. He just gave me the confidence to just do it. And then after a couple of months of being freelance, I realized, okay, I can do this. It was really hard. I didn't do my pricing properly at the beginning, and I didn't have any boundaries with clients, and I was just working crazy hours. I think a lot of freelancers go through that at the beginning, and I think you have to find your feet. But I think my whole thing was I can't fail. And I didn't, thankfully. But what is failure? I see that could have been me taking a step and going freelance and then going back into in-house or going to an agency, and that have just been like a learning experience, but I decided to stick it out. But I think everything that we do in the working world, even if you take a sabbatical and go traveling, everything is experience, and you learn so much from it. So I think that first year of being a freelancer and being in charge of my own life and time, especially because I'm very bad at organization and time management. I'm dyslexic and have ADHD, and my brain goes all the time. So I learned a lot that year, and where I am now today compared to where I was then, I'm a completely different person. But I needed that growth, I think.
It's so refreshing for you to hold your hands up and be like, in the beginning, I wasn't good at this, I wasn't good at that, because it's so easy to like speak to entrepreneurs and freelancers and think, wow, they've got their shit together, when in reality there is that wobble in the beginning.
It's awful. Like, I was terrible at setting client expectations, because I'm actually quite bad at communicate. I don't communicate with our clients at SevenSix because I'm really bad at like getting back to emails or anything that's left to me. I'm not good at that stuff. What I'm good at is strategy, big vision, big picture stuff. I can create you from my brain the most incredible campaigns, but I'm probably not going to message you back in a timely manner, and that's just not my skill set. So I've had to figure that out, and I was embarrassed quite heavily at the beginning. But I got my dyslexia diagnosis in October 2023, and off the back of that, the professor that diagnosed me and walked me through what my brain was like gave me some tips, and off the back of that, I took them to my team and said, okay, so we've all noticed that I'm really bad at certain things, but I'm excellent at others, so we're going to hone in on the strengths, and I'm going to get you guys to prop up my weaknesses. And that was a real game-changing moment for, I think, the business, full stop. And I think my entire team saw a shift in how we work, simply because I understood how my brain worked. So yeah, it's been, as I said, it's been a growth 5 years. I've evolved so much as a person, but it's just, everything just feels like it's got a little bit easier.
What made you suspicious that you were dyslexic, if you don't mind me asking? What made you get that diagnosis?
always had this thing. I was in therapy quite heavily for a few years, and I kept saying to her, like, my therapist kept making notes and saying, like, the thing that you keep saying a lot is something's not right, I'm broken. And the things that I'd always bring up, it wasn't like anything big. It was always just like little things that were just like in my brain that I was like, there's something wrong with me because other people don't think like this, other people don't do this. And then I started a podcast with the BBC. So I have a podcast on BBC Radio 4 called All Consuming, and we were commissioned for 2 seasons. So on the first season was, I can't remember the dates actually. I can't remember if the first season was around my wedding or not. Basically 2022, yeah, it must have been. So we did the first season and it was hard, but I did it. And I think we did the second season, it was 2022, and I essentially, sorry, I'm getting the dates mixed up, but anyway, we did a season, one of them, and it was around 2022 when I was getting married, and I was really stressed because obviously I was planning my wedding, there was a lot going on, and I was working really hard because I needed to pay for the wedding, and there was so much going on. And I was telling the studio, which isn't the BBC, it was a production team, separate to the BBC, but I was telling them that I was struggling with certain things, and my co-host Amit just wasn't struggling, and he is such an intelligent man. I have so much respect for him. And he is the reason why I now know I'm dyslexic, because I would find it really difficult to read off of a script. So it's a scripted podcast, which is very out of my comfort zone. I'm very much a chatter, can talk about anything, but I had a podcast before with my friend, and she would read from a script and I would just bounce off of her. And we never suspected that I couldn't read off of a script. It was just a thing. Basically, what happened is I kept getting overwhelmed, and I got to a point where I was crying after recording sessions. I was coming in and I was finding it really difficult, and it was really quick turnaround, so I couldn't have the script that far in advance. Sometimes it was like given within seconds and I had to read it, and I was really struggling. And my husband had made funny comments in the past where it was just a joke, but he was like, when you said to me once, over COVID, we got into a habit of reading to each other like bedtime stories and stuff because we were so bored. COVID, you did a lot of things. It was just like anything to entertain yourselves. It was just like, we couldn't sleep, and it was just like, let's just do some like this. Let's do this. And he basically said to me, you read like you've never read. I'm quite an avid reader. And he was like, you read aloud like you've never read before. I was like, what? And it felt, he didn't realize how like, it was a joke, and I've laughed at the time, but it was like little things like that went into my head. And basically Amit, my co-host, said to me, I feel like you need to get tested for dyslexia because I know a few people that have it and it feels like you have it. And my issues weren't that I can't, I was getting words wrong or spelling and things like that. It was literally just I wasn't able to process the script quick enough to be able to read it, and also read the script, absorb it, and then be able to comment on it. I just literally didn't have that ability, and that's just not how my brain works. I don't have the ability to do that. So I got a test. I went to this really nice professor, and he tested me. And he said from the moment I walked into the office, he knew. He laughed. He was like, he didn't say anything because I was late because I struggled to read the instructions. So I'm not very good at following simple instructions. I'm not very good at directions. It's like loads of little things. And he was like, I didn't want to say anything because obviously I have to test you. But from the moment I walked through the door, he was like, there is no way that you are not dyslexic. And I was like, that is hilarious. But we have dyslexia in my family, and it is hereditary. And then also my partner has it in his family as well. Lord have mercy on our children in the future because they are going to struggle. But at least now we know. But I got it a late diagnosis, which my professor said it was a good thing because it made me who I am today. But it definitely, I went back to therapy with some open wounds that I needed to then talk about because I found university really, really difficult. And I thought it was for different reasons, but actually I realised now it was because I basically didn't know what was going on because I was dyslexic.
As well, like the fact that you were open to it, because a lot of people are like, well, I've got to this stage in my life. However old, I'm sure I'm fine. So it's so good that you actually
different people need different things, and I think that's a big point. Like I have a few friends who actively I know are neurodivergent. They don't need a test. Like they are absolutely neurodivergent, but they cope and they put things in place and it works for them, and they don't want to get tested, and that's fine. But because I couldn't pinpoint what my issue was, and also dyslexia is way different to what people think it is. So we have dyslexic people in my family and they have problems with reading. So it would be like, you know, the letters get changed around, or, you know, think it's quite like the common stereotypical type of dyslexia that everyone knows about. But my issues weren't that. So I was like, oh, I can't be dyslexic. So then I thought I had ADHD, which turns out I probably have both, but he's told me not to get diagnosed with ADHD because he was like, you don't need a diagnosis because you don't need medication, but like an official diagnosis. He just unofficially diagnosed me. But I needed to figure out what my problem was, because I was like, there's something wrong here. It turns out there's nothing wrong. I just process things differently. But now I know that it has made my life so much easier. But I know other people who have been tested like the year before me and their lives haven't changed, and I'm like talking to them about it and they're just like, oh, no, I don't really care. I'm like, oh, that's so interesting, because it actually changed my entire existence. So yeah, different people have different like thought processes with it.
Well, thank you for being so honest about all of that. I know we kind of went off track there, but it's so relevant. No, I mean, like, it's so relevant. I've proper dived in and been like, tell me about your childhood. Tell me about your deepest...
Talk me about your trauma.
Yeah, exactly. But it's actually so relevant because apart from the challenges that you already mentioned that you had when you were working, there's so many different issues. And I think finding a way that works for you is the most important thing, because sometimes we try and make ourselves work the same way others do, or follow advice that might not be relevant to what we do. So I love that you went out there and open to diagnosis. And I guess it kind of makes sense now why SevenSix is so focused on diversity and inclusion. Is it from your own experiences as well as other things that you've seen in the industry?
Yeah, I think it's all about me. SevenSix, I launched it in 2019, but 2018 was when I kind of came up with the idea of I want to do something. But it was simply because I had so many friends who were creators at the time and had big audiences, built communities, you know, had everything that nowadays you would need as a creator. But brands just didn't know they existed, and they weren't being worked with, and they weren't being sent, you know, PR packages. Or if they went to events and stuff, it would just be simply gifting. There would be no payment involved. And I'd look at them and just be like, you are incredible creators, but brands don't know you. Agencies don't know you because they don't know where to look for you, and they don't know that this side of the internet exists. And when I say that, I'm being quite broad. It was friends who were black mixed race, South Asian, East Asian, plus size, LGBTQI+, of, you know, all different types. It was like normal people. And at the time, we were seeing all the money in influencer campaigns really going to kind of one type of person. And if we thought of the kind of stereotype of an influencer, it would be that. So it was like a young white woman, often blonde, very slim, and it was just that carbon copy over and over and over again, to the point where they were just selling to one demographic. So there was kind of no point having lots of them. You might as well just have one person that just becomes the person that gets paid for all the campaigns. So I spoke to so many of my friends, and I became like the agony aunt for so many creators. I think I still have voice notes on my phone now of people telling me kind of their war stories. And 2018, it just felt like it was when events started just happening big time, like in a scale that we hadn't seen before, and campaigns were just flowing in a different way. I think there's been like evolutions of influence marketing, but I think 2018 was like a real strong, like, boom, we're here, influence marketing is a thing. And off the back of that, I was like, I feel like I need to do something. So the concept of the agency came from me feeling like not only I needed to do something, but I had the ability to make change. And I think I was young, I was naive, I was everything you need to just go and just do something. I feel like if I had the idea now, I probably would have done it differently, or may not have done it at all, because I wouldn't have understood all the barriers. But at the time, I think I was in the perfect place in my life to just go and just try and do something. So yeah, it's come from a very personal place, not necessarily my story, because I've been quite lucky as a creator over the years, because I've always worked in marketing and been a creator at the same time. So my little black book has always been really big, and I've had access to lots of brands and lots of opportunities off the back of just knowing PRs, because I've worked with them in my day job. So I just felt like I wanted to give people access to those people, and I could be the link. So when we started off, I kind of explain our job as like we're essentially a broker. So when we started off, I was the middle woman between creators and brands. And then as time's gone on, we now manage talent, and we have a network of creators that we work with on a non-exclusive basis. And we also host campaigns on a larger scale, bigger than what we used to do when we first launched, because I have a bigger team now, and I can do more. But it's evolution of the company has just come from having more people, having a better understanding of what's needed, and then also the industry slightly changing every year, and also more money in the industry every year.
Is there a lot of educating in your role, Charlotte? Like when you're introduced, how's that part?
Yeah, I really love education in general. I love learning, which is quite interesting because I hated university. I really liked school. I hated university, but it's because I wasn't being taught in a way that I could understand.
Yeah.
So I really like helping people understand things. So we really early on started training sessions. So I'd go into corporate companies or work with small businesses or just individuals that wanted to learn how influencer marketing worked. And I still do that to this day. We do a lot of consultancy actually, where I just get sent in for a day or a couple of days and I help brands or other agencies understand different things. It could be pricing, it could be just general influencer marketing 101. We do a lot of those. And I've always really enjoyed that. But on the other side, I feel like the influencer world is constantly changing. And there's so many new creators that are just being born every day that they don't know how it works. They don't know how much they need to be paid. They don't know what the ASA is and what legalities they should be following and what legislation applies to them. A lot of them don't even know they're in an industry. So they just think, I'm posting videos on the internet, but they don't realize that is an entire industry is built around that. So we do a lot of education for creators as well. So every week we have, it just went live actually half an hour ago. We have our weekly newsletter that's for creators, and that talks about, top campaign of the week that we've seen and why we think it works. And then we'll talk about key trends and things that they should try. And then every couple of weeks, sometimes months, depending on what's new, we get insights from Meta, Pinterest, and TikTok, and they send us what's new on the apps and what people need to be aware of. And then we put that into newsletter as well. So it's just constantly educating creators to just be the best. And we have different people use the newsletter for different things. Sometimes there's opportunities in there from our clients. So it could be like, we've got tickets to this event, or, we're casting for a campaign or whatever it might be. So there's opportunities there. But some people use it literally just to know what sounds they need to use on TikTok every week. Whereas others use it to get event invites. Others use it to just see what's going on in the influencer world and just learn more. If there's ever like an industry event, like conferences and stuff, we often partner with the conferences and then we put tickets in there, which is always great because very few influencers go to conferences and the industry events. And I think they're often, even though they are industries made around them, they often are kind of forgotten about. So we like to invite as many creators to things as possible where we can.
Can you also tell us a bit more about the influencer pricing report, what it is and how it's influenced the industry, please?
Yes, I kind of forgot about that. So that big thing that our entire business is built on. So every year we release a pricing report that does two things. It shows creators how much they can charge. I won't say should charge, how much they can charge. And on the flip of that, how much brands should be looking at spending on creators in terms of budget. So it will say like if you have 10,000, so if you have like 10,000 to 20,000 followers on Instagram and you have, a good engagement rate, then you'll be you could charge this amount for an Instagram reel or this amount for a carousel, whatever it might be. So it gives brackets and it helps, creators know how much they can ask for and brands how much to budget for. But then on the other side, we also talk about D&I in it. So we really, in the survey that we send out to the creators, we ask them their makeup. We ask them, this year we specifically asked them what's their ethnicity. We asked them for their skin tones. They could see on the picture where they landed, their hair texture, whether or not they have a disability, their age range. And we basically break that down. And with the results that they give us, so there's different data that we pull. So we take our pricing data from a different group of surveys. So that comes from talent management agencies, influencer marketing experts, and our internal pricing structure from what we've paid and what people have charged us in the past. Whereas the other side, the data that we get about diversity is from the influencers themselves, and they tell us all of these things about themselves. It's anonymous, but they tell us these things, and then we link that to how much they charge. So we can see that, you know, X amount of Black creators with a darker skin tone charge this, whereas X amount of white creators with a paler skin tone charge this. Then we can compare the pay gap. So from that, we've been able to see pay gaps, and we've done this 3 years now. We started in 2021. We did 2020 to 2021. That was the first one, and that was very much around kind of race and ethnicity. And then 2022, we did a collaboration with MSL agency in the UK, and that was a bit broader, and it touched on age and disability. And then 2023, we just did numbers because we felt like we'd done enough on the diversity side for that time. And then this year we did a broad spectrum, and we did both. So yeah, it's been really eye-opening for some. We feel like even though the data itself is new to us, we've not been able to put numbers to the issues. We as an agency have known that there are pay gaps, and we have spoken about it quite heavily. So having this data is so important because it can really back up what we talk about, and it really backs up the existence of the agency, because I can say, you know, in 2024, our report showed that there's a 57%, just over, pay gap between white influencers and Southeast Asian influencers. And there's a 38% pay gap between Black influencers and white influencers getting the higher pay. So we can really pinpoint what the issues are, and then we can try and help create change. And I think these stories are really important, and it's something that we've spoken about from the beginning. And I've seen a lot of agencies in the last year talk about pay in a different way, from a different lens, in the sense that they want to protect their clients and make sure that they're paying properly rather than protecting the influencers. Whereas we're more for both, but really having creators own their craft, because if they understand how much they should charge, or could charge, I should say, and what the going rate is, then they are armed with the knowledge to be paid properly, no matter what they look like, no matter what category they fall into in terms of the diversity characteristics. So it's that equity that's needed in the industry. And I'm really excited that more people are talking about it, but I just really want to make sure that people are talking about it properly. But yeah, we're working on the 2025 one at the moment, and it will come out in June next year. But we're working on like what it looks like, and it's so exciting, but it's going to be bigger than ever before. And I actually feel physically sick when I talk, like my stomach goes like,
why?
Just because it's so big next year. We're extending because it's a UK report, so next year we're extending the territories, and it just needs to be bigger and better. And yeah, I don't know, I'm so nervous for it because I know how much work goes into it already, so it's just going to be even bigger next year.
On the other side of the table, for people like me, we're just really excited to look at it because it's so interesting. Like, you can see like how, because this space is so competitive as well, a lot of companies look at it like, we need to protect our clients because they don't want their clients to go somewhere else. But then it's like, but you need to protect influencers too, because they do work very hard, and it's crazy what factors determine who gets paid well and and who doesn't.
Yeah, it really stresses me out because a lot of the influence marketing industry technically is a quote unquote new industry if we're comparing it to any other, like, I don't know, section of advertising, right? But also, I'm 34 and I have always been exposed to influence marketing in my working life. And I know that's not that long. I've only been working for 14 years or whatever. But that's still a long time. That's a good amount of time. And if I've only ever been exposed to influencer marketing and I don't know anything before it existed, then I feel like it's not new anymore, right? But the fact that we haven't got pricing down is really stressful. And it's also low-key embarrassing that we have a whole industry built on just finger in the air and, you know, people just hoping for the best. And we see certain brands paying really low or sometimes not paying at all. And then we see other brands paying crazy amounts of money. I've seen it so many times where I'm like, great, on our talent side, we'll take that cash. That's great. I love that you're paying us all this money for it. But also, you didn't need to do that. That's not the going rate. But like, they just have budget and they don't know how to spend it. So I don't want to take that away from people, because those sums of money are fantastic. But
yeah,
and that's like the big, tech companies that just want to like, cover themselves and just pay above and beyond and be known for that. But it's just crazy that we haven't figured out what's the going rate. And outside of our report, there is actually nowhere that you can find out how much you can charge as a creator or how much you should pay a creator. So if you type into Google, how much does a marketing manager earn? How much does a graphic designer earn? How much does a school teacher earn? Like any job, you can get, pricing brackets for different levels and different jobs in different areas. But for influencers, even though this job has existed for a while, not in the same, it's definitely evolved, but you can't Google how much does an influencer make unless you Google it and then you get our pricing report. That's the only time it exists. And I find that a bit crazy that I'm the person that made that. Like, you, of all people, like not even like, it could have been one of the big tech companies. It could have been the big publications. But I actually truly believe that if we look at, not to slate the advertising industry, but if we look at all the big publications, none of them really care about influencer marketing. And I don't think it's an industry that's taken seriously enough in the advertising world, even though we're doing so much, there's so much money being pumped into it.
Yeah.
If I look at things like our first pricing report did quite well in terms of the rounds and like publications, but this year was the biggest that we've ever done. It was like the numbers were really like surprising and shocking. Not a single trade publication picked it up, even though we sent the press release out to every single one of them. But it got picked up by Forbes, The Guardian, can't remember who else. Business Insider did an entire kind of section on it, and they continue to ask questions about it. The general like mainstream press are really interested into how much influencers are being paid and like the pay gaps and things like that. But the actual industry itself, they actually don't care.
It's kind of sad though, because I feel like that could be applicable for a lot of sectors in the UK. I think salary transparency scares a lot of employers to the point where like you can be working with someone for 7 years and have no clue what their salary is, and almost be scared to ask in case they drop a bomb on you that, oh, they're earning like 20k more than you for the same role. So I think what you've done is amazing. And I think also, unless you're in the influencer marketing space, it's very easy for people to look at it and being like, ugh, they earn too much, or ugh, like not take their job seriously. But they do bring a lot of value. Why do you think influencer marketing isn't as respected in the marketing world as the other sectors? Why do you think that is?
I have this theory that I feel like a lot of men will roll their eyes, but I have this theory that because it's like a women's industry, I know a lot of male creators. Yeah. They do exist, non-binary creators. But generally, I think the stat is something like 88% of creators are women. And the majority of influencer marketing professionals are women. So I personally believe that because it's seen as a female industry, it's not cared about. Even though most of the big agencies are actually owned by men. There's only a handful of agencies owned by women. And those agencies are fantastic and are doing really well. But they've probably had a lot of a harder time. When I say like bigger agencies, they've probably had a much harder time than their male counterparts, because it's just different.
Yeah. I know it's really hard to predict trends, but obviously you are an expert in your field. I know that this industry is changing all the time, but can you see any future trends, or do you have any predictions?
I personally think that the buzzword of community, which I think in this last quarter has been the one that everyone's talking about, is going to be a big thing for next year. And also kind of like stripping back to basics, but then honing in on that community. Things like, so we did one of our clients is Proper Snacks, the snack brand. And we hosted an event for an influencer activation with them. And it was around the release of their new flavor in collaboration with Netflix. So we spoke to two of the ambassadors that we'd worked with all year and said, like, what we want to do something, what do you want to do? And they basically said, we're known for going out, let's have a proper night in. So we created this moment where it was a proper night in all sense of the word. We hired a really lovely house and had proper and Netflix branding everywhere, but to the point where it wasn't like, it felt like a branded thing. And then we put pictures of, it was Jack and Ash, Jack Remington and Ash Holmes. They are my favorite humans. They've worked with the brand for years. We've been working with them for the last 3 years on the brand, and we had loads of photos from all the different things that we've done with them. So we like put them in like lots of parts of the house. It's quite funny. But we just invited their friends who all happened to be, you know, incredible TikTokers. So we invited a group of their friends, and we just had this kind of like night in where they played board games like charades and stuff and listened to music and just had like this moment. And everyone had just had this lovely night in, had some food. Susie Bakos, who's part of our talent roster, she's also a chef, so she catered and made some Mexican food. And everyone just like had a nice time, had a couple of drinks. And everyone left and was just like, some of them actually left and were like, let's go to Soho. And they had like a nice night out. But generally everyone left and were just like, this was a really nice night. And they all posted about it. The ROI on the campaign was really high based on our KPIs. And it was really about getting the brands in the hands of the people that were our target audience. And we did that. And it was such a basic and simple and fun moment. It didn't cost the earth, but also it didn't like feel like it was cheap. It felt like a really nice moment where these creators can come together and they were just doing their job, but at the same time having fun. And I think we're going to see more of that, where creators are basically just taking charge of the situation. So all the campaigns, they'll get their briefs and then they can just make it into something that's their own.
Love that. And at the end of the day, they're the creative, so that makes total sense.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what we want, because influencers aren't actors. So we shouldn't treat them as such. There's times when you can book an influencer for a voiceover and they have to read off a script. Like that is like a quite specific time, and that's fine. Yeah. But if you want a campaign because you've booked a certain influencer, you want the campaign to do a certain thing, then you need to trust that the influencer is going to take you where you need to go. You can give them the guidance, but they should be leading you. And I think that's going to be a big I hope that that's going to be a big trend for next year. Like them leading the campaigns, but then also tapping into that actual community. And community is such a buzzword now. But when I say, I watched a video this morning where Grace Andrews, who's Stephen Bartlett's social media manager, she talked about the difference between having an audience and having a community. And sometimes we forget that they're not the same thing. And I think a lot of brands need to remember that. Like, yeah, you might have lots of followers and like they're watching your content, but they're not your community unless you're actually, you know, there's an exchange there and they actually do something for you and you can do something for them. So yeah, I think that's my top prediction.
Thank you for that. I've only got a few more questions, Charlotte.
No problem.
This one is for startups. Is it possible to leverage influencer marketing with limited budgets? And do you think it's worth it for startups and smaller companies?
Yeah, big time. I think influencer marketing is such a creative industry in terms of how you can navigate it. So there's not, depending on what your business is, I think it's always good to have budget in place, but it's not always necessary to be paying, you know, loads of cash for a creator. If you are a small business, then you can get smaller creators to create content for you in like a UGC capacity. If you have a product or a service that you want people to see, you can gift people that product or service. You won't necessarily be able to expect content back. Sometimes you can, I wouldn't recommend it, but sometimes you can contract it if you want. But I wouldn't do that unless it's like a high ticket piece. So like if you were sending someone on a trip abroad, you know, or like if it was a hotel stay, or if what else could it be, if it was like a really big, you know, a big bit of tech like a phone or a camera or something, I wouldn't necessarily contract a creator for it. I would see, if you're asking them to do it for free, I would see it as kind of market research and see if they enjoyed the product, they will share it, you'd like to think. But then you'd have to do your research, so knowing the people who do share products online. And I think sometimes people make the mistake in that they'll just send products to people, but they haven't checked, like, does this person often post about the products that they've been sent? do they often shout about brands? Is this something they do? Because if they don't, then it's probably going to be a waste of your time and budget. But yeah, there's a lot that can be done with influencers without a large budget. I think it's very much an exchange that's needed. So if you have something that they want and need and love, then you can create a nice healthy exchange there, as in the product. But also there's clients that we have that don't necessarily have big budgets, or we use their budget specifically for certain things, but then we can offer creative things in exchange. So say, if you want to work with us this year, we don't have a large budget, but actually I know you need a space, so you can use our office or our event space whenever you want. And we ask is just to put, the logo in the background or on your social media post. Or if you need graphic designer, our in-house person can help you make something for an event, or just if you have something that you can give someone that you think would be worth an exchange. I think that's often forgotten about and underrated, that kind of bartering, kind of like you do something for me, I can do something for you. I think as a small business that works really nicely, because you can't always spend cash on things, and that's understandable. But as we forget, creators are also small businesses in their own right, because they're freelance, they are entrepreneurs, and they're having to pay bills and do things. So you have to know if it aligns with how they work and their financial goals and their needs at the time.
As a founder, Charlotte, what advice would you give to other startup founders or people who are inspired by your leap of faith and going freelance, starting their own agency? Any golden pieces of advice that you wish you had?
So many. I think my top piece of advice for anyone starting their own business is to know your numbers. So I wish that I had done some kind of finance course or MBA or something before I started my business. I don't think you need to do an MBA, but I think if you're thinking about doing it and you want to start a business, it would be useful. But there are accelerator programs for startup businesses and people at the beginning of their journeys. I recently started one and then had to leave because I was too far ahead in my journey for what they were offering. But I sat there and just said to the team, like, if I had this 5 years ago, even 4 years ago, it would have changed my life. But now I know all of that information because I've had to learn it the hard way. Look for what's available to you. And now I'm joining another accelerator next year, which is very different, but it's very much targeted at people at my level and above, which is super exciting. But there's always something for you, no matter where you are in your journey. And I think my other bit of advice is Google is your friend. There's so many things that I've got literally just from Googling. Like, we won a £50,000 grant this year, and we won it because I Googled something like awards for entrepreneurs UK or something like that. And it was the Stelios Philanthropic Award for entrepreneurs in the UK, and it came up as like the first thing, and it was the day of the deadline, and I applied for it, and then 2 weeks later I had £50,000.
That's giving ADHD energy right there, working to a high tight deadline.
Honestly, that's how I live my life. But if I didn't Google it, because I just applied for an award for us, which we won, which was exciting, which was the Be Creator Marketing Campaign of the Year 2024. And I was like, let's see what other awards are around. So I literally just went down a rabbit hole, and then that came up as one of the first things. And it wasn't an award, it was a grant. And I'd never, ever thought about grants before. And that came up. So Google is your friend, and just use it really wisely, because I often get asked like really basic questions from entrepreneurs, and I'm just like, this is a really bad use of time, because you could have asked me anything. I will literally tell you anything about my business, but you've chosen the most vanilla, boring stuff that you could have Googled, but you're just not going to Google because people are really lazy and no one Googles.
Those are two golden pieces of advice, to be fair. Google, it's crazy what's out there.
Like, the world's on Google, and if not Google, then ChatGPT. So like, between those two, you're set for life. Like, you don't need to ask anyone any questions, to be honest. Yeah, and build your network. That's my outside of like robots, build your network of actual humans.
Love that. I would easily sit here for another 3 hours, Charlotte, and ask you more questions, but obviously I can't. The only thing I can really say is, if you had to sum up your biggest highlight from the last 14 years of your career, what would you say is your favorite or most rewarding moment?
I don't know if I could, in my entire career, I don't think I could. Yeah. I think my top 5 I'd say taking my first brand trip when I went to Tokyo, and I took 3 creators to Hello Kitty Land. Puro Land it's called, but Hello Kitty's World in Tokyo. That was like one of my top awards. We've won quite a few awards as an agency, and every single one of them has been like game changing. Building my team. I have actually got an email yesterday from someone that was in my office who said, I have a very special team. I've built a team, and we've got a team meeting tomorrow where we're all together, and I get really emotional when I'm with them all at the same time. I have a very strong team who are not only intelligent, but highly emotionally intelligent, and I really love being around them. Building a business with my sister. So my sister works at SevenSix as well and heads our talent division. And the fact that we are hand in hand together every day is a dream, because I'm sure loads of people have the dream to like work with their best friends, and I get to do that every day. And then I think getting to this point, if you look at statistics, the fact that we're a 5-year-old business is crazy. I can't remember what the percentage is, but a very high percentage of businesses don't make it to 2 years. Then they don't make it to 3, and getting to 5 is against all odds, especially in the UK. So I am very grateful, and I don't take my position lightly, because I know lots of people that haven't been able to get to this point. So yeah, I think just existing is an achievement in itself.
Charlotte, a huge congratulations on everything you've achieved, both personally and with this company. Honestly, like I can't wait to see where you're going to be in another 5 years. Where can people find you in case they want to see what you're up to, or the agency?
Yes, so agency, you can find us everywhere as 7-6 Agency. Instagram's like our big place, and then our website. And then me personally, I'm Charlotte 7-6 across all social media platforms, and also have my own website. But I do a lot on Instagram and LinkedIn. They're my go-to places.
Amazing. And my last question, anything that we should look out for from 6? Any exciting things that we should?
All I can think about right now is the pricing report, and that feels so far away because it's in June. Yeah, we have a lot planned. I actually have a meeting tomorrow to talk through 2025 plans. So just keep an eye on our social media, because every week there's something new coming.
Amazing. Charlotte, thank you so much.